My name's Nick Edison. I'm a young employee at Murphy Motors, a major car manufacturer. I have loved automobiles since I was a kid, and I joined this company by desperately acquiring knowledge. After that, I was recognized for my efforts, and thankfully, as a member of the development department, I was able to lead a full and hectic working life. Today, after a long meeting about a new product project, just as I was about to leave, the general manager called out to me.
Hey Nick, got a minute?
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Don't be so tense. It's nothing weird. You know the part we're planning to use for the new product in the project you're involved in, right? The one we talked about in the meeting.
Oh, that part, right. What about it?
Well, as we mentioned in the meeting, we're planning to outsource it, and I'm thinking of leaving the decision of choosing the contractor up to you.
Me? Really? I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. Seeing me flustered, the general manager gently smiled and patted my shoulder.
Life's all about experiences, you know.
But isn't it too soon for me to handle such an important task? I mean, outsourcing this part is going to be a deal worth about $100 million, right? Are you sure I'm the right person to proceed with this?
Don't worry. I've got a list of candidates here. Each company on this list is trusted and technically competent, and other employees will help with the actual negotiations and procedures. I want you to actually see the candidates and their products to develop your eye.
Develop my eye.
Yeah, it might feel daunting because it's a big deal, but I think it's absolutely necessary for your future. I believe in you, so go ahead with confidence. If you ever have any trouble or doubts, you can always come to me.
With the department head's encouraging smile, I left the meeting room feeling nervous. The list given to me had companies that our company had long relationships with, and as the department head said, each was trustworthy and technically competent. Choosing from this list, I was sure to make the right decision. From that day, I took a few days to schedule appointments and visit the companies listed. Today, I visited the last company on the list.
Mr. Nick Edison, we've been expecting you. Please, this way.
A polite young female employee guided me to the reception room. She seemed to be in her mid-20s. She respectfully handed me her business card.
Nice to meet you. I'm in charge here, Emily Sanders.
I looked over the business card she handed me. I had thought she was from sales, but she was actually from the technical department, which surprised me a bit.
Did you find it unusual that someone from the technical department rather than sales came to meet you?
Had it shown on my face? She hit the nail on the head. I wondered if it was rude to be surprised by her gender. But lying or making up something silly here would be odd. I decided to just nod. Yes, it's a betrayer to see women in technical positions in this industry. I apologize if that was rude.
No worries. I get that a lot, and it doesn't bother me. Nick, could we go over the details of this project now?
Sure, please take a look at this document. I handed Emily the document, and after a brief explanation of the project's details, it was clear she was from the technical department. She understood quickly, and her questions were specific and on point, making for a lively conversation that left me feeling refreshed. After finishing our business discussion, I left the company feeling stretched. Having visited several companies, I felt like it had the most potential. Thinking I should quickly consult with my boss, I glanced at my watch to see it was just before noon. Right on time for lunch. I figured I might as well grab a bite nearby to sort my farts before heading back to work. As I walked a bit, I happened upon a diner. Entering through its slightly faded blue curtain, eyesight was more than half full. We settled into the seats designated for two, and after stowing my bag in the luggage space, we began to browse through the lunch menu. After some deliberation, we ended up ordering the daily special for lunch. While sipping water and casually scanning the room, I noticed it had filled up completely. There were even a few people lined up near the entrance, waiting for a seat, and the staff were asking if customers wouldn't mind sharing tables. When they came to me with the same request, I saw no reason to refuse. To my surprise, the person brought to share my table was none other than Emily Sanders. We both recognized each other and exclaimed in surprise,
Oh,
"Ah!" We realized it at the same moment and exclaimed in surprise simultaneously. The person in front of me was Emily. With a slightly bashful demeanor, she gave a small nod and took the seat across from me.
what a coincidence.
Yes, I was just about to grab some lunch before heading back.
This place is great good value, generous portions, and delicious. I recommend it.
Seemingly a regular, she placed his order with the server without even looking at the menu, and then set her Dell phone down on the table. Attached to what appeared to be her cell phone was a strap featuring an old, faded light blue minivan, which inadvertently caught my eye. Hey, isn't that one of our company's models?
Yes, I've loved this model since I was a kid. My dad got me this strap when I was in elementary school. It means a lot to me, and I still cherish it.
Her eyes lighting up with genuine affection for cars.
Actually, my late dad worked in your company's development department. He was involved in developing this minivan and used to tell me all about it, which sparked my interest in the automotive industry.
I see. My dad was also part of that minivan project. Maybe they knew each other.
If that's the case, it's quite a fascinating connection. You and your dad seem to have ties to the same company.
Well, you're quite impressive yourself. Honestly, isn't it tough being a woman in a technical role in this industry?
Sure, it can be challenging. I often hear things like because you're a woman, despite being a woman, or for a woman, which can be quite tiresome. But that just motivates me to prove them wrong.
She replied brightly. That sight struck me as incredibly noble, and I couldn't help but feel it looked quite cool. Afterward, I decided to proceed with making Emily's company our top choice for the contract. Although all the companies we considered had excellent technical capabilities and their representatives were trustworthy, Emily's company stood out for its exceptional technical prowess. Moreover, it was clear Emily was genuinely passionate about cars, and I felt that working with her would lead to the creation of something great. In the process of working towards the final agreement, I made several visits to Emily's company to discuss specifications and contract her. Through these discussions, she and I became close, reaching a point where we could talk openly and comfortably. After our meetings, it became a natural habit for us to head to the usual diner without either of us formally suggesting it, where we spent many days engaging in light-hearted and enjoyable conversations. It felt like everything was going smoothly. After stopping by the factory to prepare for the internal meeting scheduled for tomorrow, I was in the office reviewing documents when I realized that I was missing some materials related to the contract with Emily's company. I realized I had left some contract-related documents at Emily's company. It is clearly my mistake. Feeling somewhat apologetic, I arranged a meeting with Emily. When I mentioned it might take some time to prepare, so I hope you don't mind waiting, she graciously accepted, which was a relief to me. If I were to return to the headquarters first and then head over, it would be past Emily's company's regular working hours. Feeling it might be a bit rude, but considering I was only there to pick up documents, I decided to head to Emily's company still in my work clothes. Upon arrival, I learned that she was still preparing the documents. I was escorted to the usual reception room by a young female office worker, who seemed to be a new employee covering for Emily. Just as I was about to reach for the iced coffee she had served, something happened. Suddenly, a can from the side swiftly snatched away the coffee. Cold. Before I could even react, the coffee was spilled on me. I was completely baffled, unsure of what had just happened. Confused and looking up, I saw a middle-aged man holding the empty cup, looking down at me with a sneer.
Hey, maybe that dirty work outfit of yours got a bit cleaner, huh? You should be thankful.
Excuse me.
I don't know if you're a subcontractor or a bottom-rung worker, but who permitted you to barge into the reception room? The representative from Murphy Motors is going to be here any minute now. Get out of here, quick. Come on, scram, you slowpoke scum.
With a twisted smile, the middle-aged man grabbed my arm, pulled me up, and forcibly made me stand. The pain from being grabbed and pulled up made me wince, and just then, the door to the reception room was flung open with a bang.
Truman, what are you doing?
What? Just waking up a piece of trash, bottom-rung worker who doesn't know his place? Can't you see? Useless women should stay out of the way.
Truman, what on earth are you saying? This man is a representative from Murphy Motors. Let go of him immediately.
No way. A man dressed in these filthy work clothes and looking like he's from the bottom rung couldn't possibly be an employee of that top tire company. Emily, have you finally lost it?
The man referred to as Manager Truman roughly let go of my arm. Then, to mock Emily, he tapped his temple with his index finger in a derisive gesture. Stunned by the outrageous behavior, I was furious at the man who was mocking Emily to no end. It's you who's out of your mind. Can't you even read the company name on the work clothes? I pointed to the chest area of my coffee-stained work clothes. Of course, it had the name Murphy Motors written on it. The color drained from Truman's face, who had been acting so arrogantly. Though it was an emergency that brought me here in this attire, isn't spilling coffee on someone more indicative of being out of line? Like Truman had done earlier, I tapped my temple area with my index finger to show him. I knew it wasn't good to stoop to his level, but I couldn't help but retort. His face, which had been pale, turned red like a boiled octopus in an instant.
Back.
He seemed like he wanted to yell at me, but somehow managed to hold on to the last bit of his sanity. I looked coldly at Truman, whose face was twisted in frustration. Since you've told me to leave, I will. Goodbye. I left the reception room and made my way to the entrance. Unfortunately, the sky was overcast, and it continued to pour rain heavily. I hesitated to ride the bus in my coffee-stained clothes and didn't have an umbrella. Just as I was about to call a taxi with my cell phone,
Nick.
Someone called me out. I turned around in surprise to see Emily running towards me with an umbrella and documents in her arms. Breathless, she reached me and offered the umbrella, looking concerned.
Nick, are you all right? Didn't get burned or anything?
Yes, luckily it was iced coffee, so I'm fine. You came all this way to check on me and even brought an umbrella.
Well, and I couldn't give you the documents earlier. But now, it's probably unnecessary, given what Truman did.
Thank you. As for the contract, I can't really decide anything right here and now, given it's a matter between companies and a large project.
Nick, please don't hesitate to speak your mind. It'd be their own fault if the contract is terminated.
She laughed it off as if she had come to terms with something. I was taken aback by Emily's unexpected behavior, thinking she was always so serious.
With this rain and your current state, if you don't mind, I can drive you.
That's too much. And aren't you still on the working hours?
It's fine. I'm planning to slam my resignation on the desk tomorrow anyway.
What? Resignation? You're leaving the company.
I've had enough of that manager for a while now. But today's outrageous act was the last straw. If you don't mind, would you listen to my venting?
Sure. I understand. I felt somewhat pressured by Emily's demeanor and nodded. Walking to the parking lot under the umbrella, Emily stopped in front of a white car and unlocked it.
Please, after you?
Thank you. I hesitantly got into her car. Sitting in the driver's seat, she asked, "Is it okay if I take you to your company?" To which I nodded. After starting the engine, she expertly set the destination on the car's GPS and began driving.
You know, the manager he spilled coffee on you earlier, Truman, to put it simply, he's a power-harassing, incompetent manager who got his job through connections.
Connections?
Yeah, connections. Apparently, he's the nephew of our company's CEO and he always flaunts that fact, bossing people around. He interferes everywhere, yells at his subordinates for no reason, and yet, he's utterly useless at his job.
Well, I can't believe there are still such blatant nepotism hires. Does the company's upper management recognize this and just let it slide?
I don't know. Our company's structure is outdated, and they don't take compliance seriously. There's no way for regular employees like us to report directly to the higher-ups without going through our bosses. It's like everyone in a managerial position is just watching Truman's face, making it difficult to go through other managers and leaving him unchecked.
Emily sighed deeply.
And there was a senior employee who tried to fight and report Truman's wrongdoings to the higher-ups. But Truman crushed him with power. He intentionally caused damages and blamed the senior, forcing him into a situation where he had no choice but to resign.
What? He deliberately made mistakes to harm the company because he didn't like someone.
It's unbelievable, right? But for him, harassing someone he dislikes is more important than what happens to the company.
It's unbelievable. And the fact that the company lets this go on is unbelievable too.
Just today, he tried to take credit for the contract with Murphy Motors, barging in without knowing anything about the deal. Even though the whole company was buzzing about this contract, Truman was clueless until today. Of course, I had submitted reports and discussed it in meetings multiple times, but he never looked at the reports or paid attention in meetings. It's like he has no interest in work at all.
And to think he spilled coffee on the major client. In a way, that's almost impressive.
The power of assumption is strong. He probably thought that the person in charge of such a big deal at the major company would be some elite in a nice suit.
And he never imagined that person would be me, in work clothes, even though the company name was on my chest.
That's just the kind of person Truman is. There have been many employees who, like the senior, either resigned because they couldn't stand him or were driven out for various reasons, all because of him. People who genuinely love crafting things and are serious and just end up leaving. And those who stay are either sucking up to Truman or are the type who prefer to avoid conflict. I've put up with his tyranny because I love this industry, but I've reached my limit.
I see. I had no idea there was such a problematic person at your company. I was entrusted with this project to learn how to judge people and companies, but I still have a lot to learn.
Well, normally, you wouldn't know about internal relationships from the position of a client. Maybe detectives or police officers are better suited to sensing that kind of thing than corporate employees.
After making a joke, Emily sighed again, so deeply it was hard to tell how many times she had done so before. She must have been troubled by this for a long time. There might not be much I can do for her, considering all she has endured. But there is one thing. Using this method feels like stooping to that man's level, so I'd rather avoid it if possible. But desperate times call for desperate measures. After some hesitation, I decided to bring it up. What if, just what if, there was a way to get back at Truman? What would you do? Emily looked surprised. Perhaps she is wondering why I would suddenly suggest such a thing. After thinking it over for a moment, she nodded.
If there's a way, I'd want to take action. People like him will ruin the company. We can't let someone who destroys the environment for good craftsmanship go unchecked, not to mention wasting the efforts of seniors and colleagues who have fought before. But, Nick, what kind of method are we talking about?
It's simple. Fight connections with connections. It's a bit childish, but they started it, so it's fair game, right? She looked puzzled, but I gave her an encouraging smile. After dropping me off at my company, I immediately headed to a certain place. Despite the surprised looks from my colleagues I passed by, seemingly taken aback by my attire and the unusual atmosphere, I didn't let it bother me and proceeded to knock on the door of a specific room. A few days later, I had Emily come to our company's conference room under the guise of a business meeting. As I knocked and opened the door to the conference room, I could feel Emily gasp in surprise behind me.
What? President Murphy?
The president of our company waited for her inside the room. Emily, being a car enthusiast, recognized the president. She was stunned, standing there as if frozen, at the unexpected presence.
Hey, you must be Emily. My son always seems to be in your care.
Is he your son?
After expressing her surprise, Emily seemed to ponder for a moment. She was likely trying to recall if she knew someone with the surname Murphy. The president watched his reaction with a bit of amusement, then turned to me.
It's the man standing next to you, Emily.
Really?
Emily looked at my face. I nodded silently.
Seriously?
Sure.
I had heard that your dad also worked for the same company, but I never imagined you were the CEO's son. Oh, but the last names are different. Ah, complicated family matters.
Emily seemed confused as he glanced back and forth between me and President Murphy before asking me hesitantly. No, it's not about hiding the fact that I'm the CEO's son. I used the name Addison at the company. Addison is my mom's maiden name, and my real name is Nick Murphy. Only the executives and some employees know I'm the CEO's son. Born into a privileged family, both of my parents, despite being busy, poured all their love into raising me. I loved my family business, cars, and I admired my dad who worked hard for the company, striving to follow in his footsteps. However, this perfect environment also bred unwarranted jealousy and resentment. Achievements in exams or competitions were often attributed to parental influence, not my own efforts. Whether it was sports or arts, it might be a compliment for them, but there was no way that I could be pleased when they said, "If your parents are good, the son will grow up well." Friends, perhaps jokingly, teased me for being a rich kid. In high school, my first girlfriend bragged behind my back that her boyfriend was the CEO's son. Being known everywhere as the CEO's son felt more like a shackle than an honor, which is why I wanted to hide my identity and test my own abilities while I was still young.
This guy is stubborn. He insisted on not using any connections, took our company's job hunting on his own merit, and joined the development team. Of course, I had asked the head of development to give him tasks outside of development as well to gain experience. Sending him to deal with Emily Company was part of that process. I wanted him to learn how to judge other companies and people, but I never expected my son to return home having had coffee spilled on him.
We are truly sorry for the misconduct of our employee.
That's all right. We don't want an apology from you. It needs to come from Truman himself to be meaningful.
Yes, that makes sense.
Emily agreed, with her expression complex. She is likely thinking that man would not easily apologize.
To make him reflect, we might have to intimidate him a bit.
Intimidate?
Yes, it would be good if he came to regret his actions and apologized alone. But from what I've heard, I doubt he's that type of man. So, we're thinking of going directly to the CEO. Truman's tyranny has caused many talented individuals to leave, right? Your company is honest and has technical prowess. It would be a significant loss for us to let it go, and we truly hope for reform. To that end, let's bring up the contract, though a little pushy, and say that we can trust a company that disrespects compliance like this.
My dad said, pausing before smiling gently. It was not the expression of a CEO, but the gentle, caring face of a dad shown at home.
And you know, Emily, your dad was one of my best colleagues. I've heard a lot about you from him. I personally cannot forgive a man who causes pain to the dear daughter of my valued employees, so I hope you'll allow me to meddle a little.
Mr. Murphy, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The meeting to discuss these issues was scheduled for a week later, outside of business hours, in Emily Company's reception room. The contrast between Truman, the manager's shocked expression upon seeing me, and the bewildered Truman, the CEO, was slightly amusing. Emily, brought along under the pretext of being a deal representative, looked nervous. "Hello, Mr. Truman. It's been a while since our last encounter."
Good afternoon, Mr. Truman. It seems my son was under your care recently.
We greeted Truman warmly. Truman looked back at us with a slightly puzzled expression.
Is he your son? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Really, it was just a few days ago. My son, dressed in work clothes, apparently had the misfortune of visiting your reception room, where you kindly decided to clean his dirty work clothes by spilling coffee on them.
At my dad's words, Truman seemed to finally realize it was me he had treated so rudely. His face turned from confusion to bright red, glaring at me sharply.
What? Are you son of the CEO? Are you?
Hey, what kind of attitude is that towards a client CEO and his son? More importantly, What Mr. Murphy is referring to, what's that about?
I have no idea. Perhaps he's mistaken.
No, it's true. I was there.
Emily said, speaking up firmly for the first time. Truman, the manager, shot her a glare as if to warn her not to say more, but Emily, prepared to resign if necessary, was unfazed.
While I was preparing the documents, Nick was waiting in the reception room, where Truman barged in and said, "Looks like your dirty work clothes got a bit cleaner. Be grateful." After hearing Truman's shouting, I rushed over and found Nick drenched in coffee and Truman yelling at him.
Is that true?
No, it was a misunderstanding.
As she said, "You grabbed my arm, claiming this wasn't a place for subcontractors or bottom-tier workers like me. It seems your company has quite the prestigious employee training program." I interjected, forcing Truman into silence. The CEO's face drained of color.
What have you done? You should apologize to him.
I didn't realize he was a client.
That's no excuse.
The CEO demanded a deep apology from Truman. It seemed the CEO at least had a minimum level of decency. I was almost impressed by Truman's audacity to still challenge me in this situation. Seeing the opportunity, I spoke up. "An apology for spilling coffee on me is sufficient. Fortunately, the stains were removed by cleaning, and we won't terminate a contract over this. However, Truman, you mentioned you didn't realize I was a client.
And what about it?
That implies it would have been acceptable if I were an employee or subcontractor of your company. Mr. CEO, haven't you noticed an unusual increase in resignations from Truman's department recently? One can easily imagine how someone who throws coffee on strangers behaves with their employees. Personally, I wouldn't want to work under such a supervisor."
I've only heard a bit of the story, so I'm not jumping to conclusions. But I believe a good company is made by its employees. A company can be improved or worsened by its staff. Employees who oppress good workers are honestly like a cancer. I strongly suggest conducting an investigation.
You're right. I'm embarrassed to admit I was unaware of these issues. We will conduct an internal investigation, and if these allegations prove true, we will take strict action.
What? Are you really going to believe what outsiders say?
The company isn't a playground. What joy do you find in acting like a bully? You are behaving yourself at home until the investigation is complete.
The CEO said with a sigh of exasperation. True to Truman's defense, the mere words of an outsider wouldn't constitute proof. Yet, ironically, the manager's behavior provided the strongest evidence. The investigation reached out not only to current employees, but also to those who had left the company. The results of the investigation were as expected. Half a year later, due to our busy schedules, we hadn't had the chance to meet up for a while, so today we had planned to have a meal together. Naturally, we chose that familiar diner. It seemed new menus had been added to the menu list since our last visit. As I was looking over the menu with interest, I heard someone call out, "Nick," and I looked up. "Emily, it's been a while. You look well."
Do I? Yeah, maybe. I've been really enjoying my work lately. It's all thanks to you and your dad.
"I'm glad to hear that. I was worried you might be overexerting yourself. By the way, what happened to Truman?" Since then, she and I have grown even closer, frequently exchanging personal messages through our private contacts. Our relationship continues to be like that of comrades who share a love for cars and dedication to our work. Now we're closer than ever. We don't just talk about work and cars, we talk about hobbies and family. I enjoyed listening to her weekend and holiday stories. And now we converse in a more casual manner. Despite knowing that I'm the son of a major corporation CEO, she treats me the same as before. Lately, I find this relationship with her to be very comfortable.
Actually, I haven't told you, but Truman was transferred to the factory. There was talk of firing him, but it was decided to keep him under surveillance instead, fearing he might cause trouble elsewhere.
Is it safe to keep him around?
Yeah, there's a foreman at the factory, kind of like a master craftsman, and he's been a friend of the CEO for a long time. He reports directly to the CEO if anything happens, so the former manager can't just pull ring anymore. Because he's loud and strict, I bet he's genuinely intimidating. Truman, he only ever bullied those weaker than him.
I see, so that's a way to discipline someone. Straightening out twisted attitudes seems most effective with that kind of approach.
Really? Those who were complicit in wrongdoing or engaged in power harassment along with the former manager were all disciplined at once, so that was probably a bigger ordeal. But things are definitely improving. Everyone has become motivated to create products that are second to none, just like before. Someday, Nick, I'll surprise you with a product so impressive. You better be ready for it.
The sight of her slightly mischievous yet proud smile was somewhat dazzling and felt incredibly beautiful to me. Life is unpredictable. Just like Emily, who once contemplated resigning, is now laughing with eyes shining brightly. Just as the man who had caused so much trouble and acted selfishly received his due consequences. Life can change for the better or worse at any moment. That's why it's essential to make decisions and take action. I too should muster my courage. With determination, I reached into my bag and pulled out a pair of movie tickets.